Gaslighting is when someone messes with your sense of reality. It doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, like someone just gently rewriting the story over and over until you start to wonder if you're the problem. You remember something clearly, and they tell you it never happened. You try to explain how something made you feel, and they say you're being too sensitive, doing it not to disagree, but to make you question what's real. And over time, you start to believe them more than you believe yourself. That's what makes gaslighting so powerful. It doesn't come at you all at once. It's slow, one small moment at a time, one conversation, one look, one denial. And eventually, you start second-guessing everything. Your memory, your emotions, your gut. It shows up in all kinds of relationships, romantic, family, even work. And it always follows the same pattern. Confusion, doubt, silence. Because if they can make you doubt your version of reality, it gets easier to control you. So what do? You get clear. You start writing things down. You trust how something made you feel, even if someone else tries to spin it. You don't need permission to believe your own experience. The more clearly you see what's happening, the harder it is for anyone to twist it. And once you stop explaining yourself to someone who's pretending not to understand, that's when you take your power back. Love bombing. This technique is less commonly known, but just as commonly used. Love bombing feels amazing, and that's exactly the problem. It starts with intensity. Not affection, not care, intensity. You're suddenly the center of someone's world. They're obsessed with you. They say you're perfect. They talk about forever on the second date. There's constant texting, late-night calls, huge compliments, sudden gifts, and it all moves so fast you barely have time to breathe. It doesn't feel like getting to know someone. It feels like getting swept away. And for a moment, it's hard to see anything wrong with it, because who doesn't want to be adored? But that's the point. Love bombing isn't about you. It's about creating a feeling, one that's hard to walk away from later. Because once you're hooked on the high, they change, they pull back, they go cold. You start wondering what you did to make it stop. You blame yourself for the shift, and you try to win back the version of them that never actually existed. The one who said all the right thing, who knew exactly what you needed to hear. That version was the bait. This is how emotional control gets disguised as romance. It happens in toxic relationships, narcissistic dynamics, even trauma bonds. Love bombing isn't about love. It's about control, disguised as intensity, wrapped in flattery. So how do you protect yourself? You slow down. You ask questions. You look at their patterns, not their promises. Real connection takes time, space, and honesty. It grows quietly, not in a rush. If someone tries to build something serious before trust even has time to form, it's not love. It's a performance, and you don't owe anyone an encore. Guilt tripping. Guilt tripping is one of the most common and sneakiest ways people try to control you. And the thing is, it doesn't usually look like manipulation. It's not someone yelling or demanding. It's more like a sigh, a pause, a quiet little, well, after everything I've done for you. They don't come right out and say it, but suddenly you feel like you've let them down, like you should have known better, like saying no makes you selfish or cold, or ungrateful. That's how guilt tripping works. It's not about what you actually did. It's about making you feel like you've failed in some invisible way. Even if you were just setting a boundary, even if you were doing what's right for you. It turns care into currency, and your kindness becomes a debt you're always trying to repay. The worst part? It works, especially if you're empathetic. You feel the tension, the silence, the disappointment, and before you know it, you're apologizing for something you didn't even do, or agreeing to something you never wanted. It shows up everywhere, in families, relationships, friend groups, and it always has the same goal. If I can't make you say yes, I'll make you feel bad for saying no. So how do you deal with it? You pause. You take a step back from the guilt and ask yourself, did I actually do something wrong? Or am I just being made to feel like I did? Real guilt comes from your own values. Manipulated guilt, that's someone else's control tactic. You're allowed to hold your boundary, even if someone else tries to punish you for it. Triangulation. Triangulation is what happens when someone pulls a third person into a conflict, instead of talking to you directly, making a sort of social triangle. It doesn't feel like an argument. It feels like a side conversation you were never invited to. Suddenly, you're hearing things like, well, Sarah agrees with me, or everyone thinks you're overreacting. That's not communication. That's strategy. Triangulation creates this dynamic where you're not just dealing with one person. You're now up against a whole invisible team. And because you're outnumbered, your voice starts to feel smaller. You start wondering if you're the one who's being difficult, or dramatic, or wrong. And that's the whole point. When someone triangulates, they're not trying to solve the problem, they're trying to win it. By building alliances, by shifting the focus, by making it seem like you're the common denominator. This tactic shows up a lot in toxic family systems. Like when a parent complains about one sibling to another, instead of having a direct conversation. It also shows up in romantic relationships, especially when one partner tries to involve a friend, an ex, or even a therapist to validate their side. Suddenly, you're not just disagreeing with them, you're defending yourself against this whole narrative. And it's exhausting, because you're not just dealing with the actual issue anymore. You're now being dragged into someone else's storyline, with someone else holding the pen. So how do you stop it? You pull the triangle apart. Say this: if you have a problem with me, talk to me, not about me. Keep things direct. Keep them simple. You don't need to defend yourself to a third party you never even spoke to. You get to set the tone for your own conversation. And if someone refuses to meet you there, you're allowed to step out